Welcome to the Cozy Storytime, your peaceful space to unwind and relax. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and like the video for more cozy stories every night. So, where are you watching it from? And what are you doing right now? I hope you enjoyed this story. Tonight, let your mind drift into the quiet halls of Hogwarts, where magic hums softly through ancient stone and candlelight flickers like whispers of forgotten secrets. But beneath the comfort of enchanted ceilings and warm fireplaces, something stirs, a passage unseen, a doorway not meant to open. Close your eyes. Let the gentle rhythm of my voice guide you. Feel the cool air of the castle corridors, the distant echo of footsteps lost in the vastness of time. The world outside fades, and you find yourself standing at the edge of something unknown, something ancient. A portal between light and shadow, between the world we know and the world that lingers just beyond our reach. Breathe deeply. The story unfolds like a dream, steady and unhurried. No need to rush, just listen, relax, and allow yourself to be carried away. You are safe here. But in the depths of the unknown, something is waiting. And the night has only just begun. Hogwarts had always been a place of wonder, a sanctuary of magic, learning, and adventure. The castle held secrets in its every corner, whispered stories through its ancient walls, and offered endless mysteries to those daring enough to seek them. But tonight, something felt different. It was the kind of difference that was hard to put into words, an unsettling feeling that crawled under the skin and refused to leave. The air was heavier than usual, almost as if the castle itself was holding its breath. The torches flickered in strange patterns, casting shadows that moved in ways they shouldn't. Even the portraits, usually lively with chatter, seemed quieter. Their eyes darted around nervously as if sensing something lurking just beyond the veil of normalcy. I had felt it all evening, that eerie presence pressing in from all sides. It wasn't just me, Ron and Hermione had noticed it too. We had spent most of our time in the Gryffindor common room, pretending to focus on our assignments while sneaking glances at each other, each waiting for someone to voice what we all knew deep down: something was wrong. Ron, always the first to crack under tension, finally leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "You feel it too, right?" Hermione looked up from her book, her brows knitted together. "Of course I do," she admitted. "It's not just paranoia. Something's changed in the castle." I nodded, glancing toward the window. The black lake outside was still as glass, reflecting the full moon with eerie clarity. Even the whomping willow stood unnaturally still. It was as if the entire world had paused, waiting for something to happen. The common room was unusually empty for this time of night. Most students had gone to bed early, which was strange in itself. Hogwarts was never short of night owls. Even Fred and George hadn't been around to liven up the atmosphere with their usual mischief. It was as if an unspoken agreement had passed through the castle, telling everyone to retreat into the safety of their dormitories. But I wasn't ready to sleep. Not with this feeling lingering in my bones. "I think we should take a walk," I said suddenly, my voice firm despite the uncertainty gnawing at me. Ron's eyes widened. "Are you mad? You want to wander around when the castle feels like something's watching us?" Hermione, despite her usual strictness about following rules, was already closing her book. "He's right," she said, surprising Ron. "Something is off tonight, and I don't like not knowing what it is." Ron groaned but stood up anyway, muttering something about how we were all going to get detention. The corridors were eerily silent as we stepped outside the Gryffindor common room. Normally, even at night, there were distant sounds, the hum of moving staircases, the echoes of Filch grumbling, the occasional whoosh of Peeves zooming by. But tonight, there was nothing. Just the soft shuffle of our footsteps and the flickering glow of the torches lining the stone walls. We walked cautiously, our eyes darting to every shadow. The castle seemed bigger somehow, as if the halls stretched further than they should, as if the corners led to places they weren't meant to. It was an illusion, surely, a trick of the dim lighting. And yet, my skin prickled with unease. Then we heard it. A whisper. Not from one voice, but many. Faint, overlapping murmurs drifting through the hallway, spoken in a language that didn't belong in this world. We froze. "Tell me you heard that," Ron whispered, gripping his wand tightly. Hermione's face was pale. "I heard it." I strained my ears, trying to make sense of the words, but they were too distant, too alien. The voices slithered through the air like unseen tendrils, growing louder with each step we took. "It's coming from the corridor near the library," I whispered. We exchanged nervous glances before moving forward. The deeper we walked into the castle, the heavier the atmosphere became. It wasn't just fear. We had all faced danger before. This was something else. It was as if the castle itself was resisting us, trying to warn us away. Then, all at once, the whispering stopped. A deafening silence fell over us, thick and absolute. Even our footsteps seemed muted. Then, a scraping sound. It came from ahead, just beyond the turn leading toward the restricted section of the library. Slow, deliberate, like something dragging itself across the stone floor. My heart pounded in my chest. "Lumos," Hermione whispered, and a soft glow illuminated the passage ahead. For a moment, nothing was there. Just rows of towering bookshelves and the faint scent of parchment and dust. But then, at the very end of the corridor, a shadow moved. Not a person. Not even a creature. Just a shadow. It flickered and wavered, stretching unnaturally long before pulling itself back together. It had no form, no face, just darkness given shape. It turned toward us. The torches around us flickered wildly, their flames dancing as if caught in a sudden wind. The temperature dropped, and a suffocating pressure filled the air. Then the whispering returned. Louder this time. Urgent. Insistent. Ron took a step back, gripping my arm. "We should not be here," he hissed. Hermione looked terrified but didn't move. "That's not," she started, but her voice faltered. The shadow pulsed. It didn't move closer, but it didn't need to. The longer we stood there, the stronger the feeling of wrongness became. Then, in the silence, something else happened. A soft, barely visible ripple in the air, like heat rising from the ground, appeared near the shadow. It shimmered, distorting the space around it. And then, for just a second, we saw what lay beyond it. A place that should not exist. A void, infinite and endless, filled with twisting darkness and glowing red eyes. Not one pair, not 10, but hundreds, all blinking in unnatural synchronization. A wave of nausea hit me. I felt as though I were standing on the edge of something vast and hungry. The shadow pulsed again, and the ripple in the air grew stronger. The feeling of something watching us intensified, and for the first time in my life, I knew what true dread felt like. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The ripple faded. The shadow recoiled. The torches steadied. The pressure in the air lifted, leaving behind only the rapid beating of our hearts. We stood there, frozen, struggling to comprehend what we had just witnessed. Ron was the first to speak. That, he said, his voice shaky, was not normal. Hermione swallowed hard. That was a portal, she whispered. I turned to her sharply. A portal? She nodded. I read about something similar. A rift between worlds. But this wasn't like anything I've ever read before. Ron let out a nervous laugh, though there was no humor in it. Brilliant. Just brilliant. As if Hogwarts doesn't have enough problems, now we have a portal to what? A nightmare dimension? I looked back toward where the ripple had been. The air was still again, but I could feel it lingering beneath the surface, waiting. Whatever that was, it wasn't gone. It was just the beginning. The moment we stepped away from the eerie shadow and the flickering ripple in the air, I felt the tension clinging to my skin like cold sweat. The castle was silent again, but it was the kind of silence that felt unnatural, like the world was waiting for something else to happen. My heart was still pounding from what we had just witnessed, and judging by the pale expressions on Ron and Hermione's faces, they were just as shaken. Ron exhaled sharply, running a hand through his already messy red hair. All right. That was creepy as hell. Can we all agree on that? I nodded, gripping my wand tightly. What was that thing? Hermione, still staring at the now empty corridor, swallowed hard before answering. It wasn't just a shadow. It was connected to the portal somehow. She hesitated, then added, and I don't think it was supposed to be here. I frowned. What do you mean? She turned toward us, her expression grave. I mean, that portal, it didn't open naturally. Ron's face twisted with unease. Great. So someone opened it? Why would anyone want to open a door to? He gestured vaguely to the space where the ripple had been. Whatever the bloody hell that place was? Hermione shook her head. I don't know. But I do know that if we could see that world through the portal, then it means the barrier between our world and that one is weakening. If it's left open too long, she trailed off, her eyes dark with thought. I didn't need her to finish her sentence. I had seen what lay on the other side of that portal, those eyes, the endless void, the creeping sense of something waiting. If that thing fully broke into our world, I didn't even want to imagine what would happen. We need to tell someone, I said, my voice firmer now. Hermione nodded immediately. Professor McGonagall, or maybe even Dumbledore. Ron, however, hesitated. Hold on. What if we're overreacting? I mean, yeah, that was terrifying, but maybe it's some kind of weird magical phenomenon, like a rift that closes on its own? His voice lacked conviction, and I could tell he wanted to believe that explanation, even if he didn't truly trust it himself. Hermione shot him an unimpressed look. Ron, portals to unknown dark dimensions don't just randomly appear in Hogwarts. Yeah, well, a lot of things randomly happen in Hogwarts, Ron muttered, but he sighed in defeat. Alright, fine. Let's go to McGonagall. She'll probably be less terrifying about it than Dumbledore. I nodded, but something deep inside me felt uncertain. Something about that portal, about the way the castle felt tonight, made me question whether anyone, even Dumbledore, truly knew what was happening. We turned away from the corridor and made our way back toward the main part of the castle. The walk back should have been quick, but the atmosphere around us felt heavier with every step. It was like the very air was thick with something invisible, something pressing against us. Then, as we rounded the corner leading toward the main staircase, we stopped dead in our tracks. The castle was changing. The grand marble staircase, the one that should have led up toward McGonagall's office, was gone. In its place stood a long, dimly lit corridor, a corridor that shouldn't have existed. The torches along the walls burned with an unnatural greenish hue, casting eerie shadows that seemed to stretch and bend unnaturally. The entire hallway felt wrong, like it didn't belong in Hogwarts at all. Ron took a step back. Okay, that wasn't there before. No, it wasn't, Hermione agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. I glanced behind us, my stomach twisting with unease. The corridor we had come from was still there, but the path ahead had changed. Hogwarts was a living, breathing castle, and its staircases and halls often shifted, but this wasn't the same. This wasn't the playful, mischievous magic that occasionally led students to the wrong classrooms. This was something else. I turned back to the corridor in front of us, feeling the same unnatural pull that I had felt near the portal. It was like the castle was pushing us toward it, guiding us deeper into whatever mystery we had stumbled upon. Hermione clutched her wand. We need to be careful. Ron groaned. You're not suggesting we go in there, are you? We don't have much choice, do we? I said. The main staircase is gone. Ron groaned louder. Why do things like this always happen when we're together? Despite his complaints, we stepped forward. The corridor was silent except for the soft echoes of our footsteps. The deeper we walked, the colder the air became, and I found myself gripping my wand tighter. There was something deeply unnatural about this place, something that made every nerve in my body scream at me to turn back. Then, we saw the door. At the very end of the hallway, a single wooden door stood slightly ajar. It was old, far older than any of the other doors in the castle. Strange symbols had been carved into its surface, symbols that glowed faintly in the dim torchlight. The whispering had started again, too, drifting through the air like a faint breeze. I swallowed. Hermione. She stepped closer, running a finger over one of the symbols. I've seen these before, she murmured. They're protective runes. Protective against what? Ron asked nervously. Before Hermione could answer, the door creaked open on its own. A rush of cold air hit us, and for a brief moment, I saw it again, the ripple in the air, the same shimmer we had seen in the library corridor. But this one was larger, more unstable, and something was moving behind it. A shadow, darker than anything I had ever seen before, shifted within the portal's glow. It was humanoid, but its limbs were elongated, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. It moved slowly, as if testing the boundary between its world and ours. My breath hitched. It was trying to step through. Ron swore under his breath, raising his wand. Hermione grabbed my arm. We have to stop it, she hissed. I barely had time to react before the figure let out a sound, an inhuman, distorted whisper that made my skin crawl. The torches flickered wildly, and I felt a force, powerful and overwhelming, push against us. "Close the door," I shouted. Ron and I lunged forward, slamming our hands against the old wooden door. But the force was pushing back, as if something was holding it open from the other side. My muscles strained as I fought against it, my heart pounding. Then, Hermione shouted a spell, Colloportus. And with a loud snap, the door sealed shut. The symbols on its surface flared with a bright blue light, and then silence. I stumbled backward, panting. The unnatural coldness faded, and the whispering stopped. The corridor, though still eerie, no longer felt suffocating. Ron collapsed against the wall. "Okay," he gasped. "So, definitely not a random magical phenomenon." Hermione, her face still pale, turned to me. "That portal isn't stable. Something is forcing it open. And if we don't figure out why," she hesitated, "we might not be able to stop it next time." I swallowed hard, nodding, because deep down, I knew she was right. This wasn't over. This was only the beginning. The moment the door sealed shut, a strange stillness settled over the corridor. The eerie green torches flickered once, then steadied, their glow returning to something closer to normal. But the weight in the air, whatever dark presence had been pressing against us, remained, lingering like a whisper of something unseen, just out of reach. Ron was still catching his breath against the wall, his face pale with shock. "All right," he gasped. "That was the worst thing I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of bad things." I didn't disagree. Hermione, though shaken, was already back on her feet, pressing her fingers against the door as if trying to feel the magic still humming in the wood. "The runes are old," she murmured. "Older than Hogwarts, maybe." I frowned. "Older than Hogwarts?" Ron groaned. "Oh, come on. Are we saying the castle was built on some ancient cursed ground now?" Hermione shot him a look. "Hogwarts has always had secrets, Ron." She turned back to me. "This portal, it wasn't something created recently. I think it's been here for a long time." A cold feeling curled in my stomach. If that was true, it meant something had triggered it. Something had forced it open after all these years. "We still need to tell McGonagall," I said. "She needs to know." A sudden gust of wind blew through the corridor, snuffing out the torches in an instant. We were plunged into complete darkness. Hermione gasped. I heard Ron curse under his breath. Then, the whispering started again. But this time, it was closer. My breath caught in my throat as an unseen force rushed past me, cold and sharp like ice slicing through skin. I reached for my wand. Lumos. The tip of my wand flared with light, casting flickering shadows against the stone walls. Hermione and Ron had done the same, their wands glowing like beacons in the suffocating darkness. But the moment the light illuminated the corridor, my stomach turned. Something was moving in the shadows. Not just one thing. Many. Figures, dark and twisted, like living silhouettes, shifted along the walls, stretching unnaturally, their shapes bending and twisting as if they were bleeding out of the stone itself. Ron's voice was tight with panic. Those weren't there a second ago. Hermione's grip on her wand tightened. It's because of the portal. The magic is leaking out. I barely had time to register her words before one of the shadows lunged. It moved too fast, faster than anything I had ever seen. A blur of darkness, a twisting limb reaching out. I jumped back just in time. The shadowy hand missed me by an inch, its fingers brushing the air where I had stood. But the moment it recoiled, I felt something cold seep into my skin, an unnatural chill that made my head spin. Ron grabbed my arm, pulling me back. We need to go. Hermione was already moving, her wand raised. Lumos Maxima. A brilliant flash of light burst from her wand, blinding and white-hot. The shadows recoiled, twisting and shrinking back into the darkness. The whispering grew louder, angrier. We didn't waste time. We ran. The corridor stretched longer than I remembered, as if the castle itself was warping around us. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. The shadows along the walls moved, shifting and twisting like they were trying to catch us. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolled midnight. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the torches flared back to life. The whispering stopped. The corridor was normal again. We came skidding to a halt, panting. I turned around, my wand still raised, expecting, waiting for something to come after us. But there was nothing. The hallway behind us was empty. Ron bent over, hands on his knees, struggling to breathe. "Nope," he said between gasps. "I don't care what's going on. I hate it." Hermione looked shaken but determined. "That proves it," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "The portal isn't just opening, it's leaking into Hogwarts." I looked back down the corridor, heart still racing. "And if we don't stop it, those things are going to get stronger." Ron groaned. "Why us? Why is it always us?" I didn't have an answer. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. We had barely scratched the surface of something much, much bigger. And whatever had opened that portal, it wasn't done yet. We didn't stop running until we reached the Gryffindor common room. My lungs burned and my legs felt like lead, but I didn't dare slow down until we were safely past the fat lady's portrait. Balderdash! Hermione gasped the password. The portrait swung open, and we practically stumbled inside, slamming it shut behind us. The warmth of the common room was a stark contrast to the chilling, unnatural cold of the corridor we had just escaped from. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, casting flickering golden light over the familiar red and gold furniture. For a moment, the world felt normal again. Ron collapsed onto the nearest armchair, still catching his breath. "All right. We are officially cursed." Hermione ignored him, pacing back and forth as she chewed her lip, lost in thought. "This is bad. Really bad." I sat down, still gripping my wand tightly. "You think?" She shot me a look but didn't argue. That corridor shouldn't have been there. Hogwarts shifts sometimes, but that was different. And the shadows, she trailed off, shaking her head. That wasn't just magic gone wrong. That was something alive. Ron shuddered. "Yeah, and I'd rather not meet them again." I rubbed my temples, trying to make sense of it all. Yet the portal has been here for a long time. Why is it only now that things are getting worse? Hermione stopped pacing, her eyes flickering with realization. Something must have triggered it. Something or someone forced it open wider. Ron frowned. You mean, like, on purpose? I met Hermione's gaze, a sinking feeling forming in my gut. Someone wanted this to happen. Silence fell over us. The idea of someone willingly tampering with such dark, unstable magic was horrifying. Whoever they were, they had either vastly underestimated what they were dealing with, or worse, they knew exactly what they were doing. We need to find out who, Hermione said firmly. Ron groaned. Oh, good. Because I was just thinking that sneaking around looking for dark wizards sounded fun. I ignored his sarcasm. Where do we start? Hermione hesitated. The library. Ron groaned even louder. Hear me out, she insisted. There's no way Hogwarts doesn't have some kind of record on ancient magic like this. Yet the portal has existed for centuries. Someone must have studied it before. I nodded. That makes sense. Ron muttered something under his breath about how nothing about this made sense, but he didn't argue. It was decided, then. First thing in the morning, we head to the library. For now, though, I needed sleep. I climbed the spiral staircase up to my dormitory, my mind still racing. The moment my head hit the pillow, exhaustion pulled at me, dragging me into restless sleep. I woke up in another place. I wasn't in my bed anymore. I stood in the middle of a long, dark corridor. The walls were cold stone, damp with something that smelled ancient, like the air hadn't been disturbed in centuries. The torches lining the hallway flickered with sickly green flames, casting eerie, twisting shadows along the floor. I tried to move, but my body felt sluggish, as if I were wading through thick water. A whisper echoed through the hall, soft, distant, but growing louder. Then, ahead of me, the air rippled. Just like the portal. A shimmering tear in the world hovered in the darkness, shifting and twisting like a wound that refused to close. And behind it, watching, were eyes. Not human. Not even alive in the way we understood life. They gleamed, piercing and unnatural, staring right at me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And then, a hand, shadowy and too long, reached through the portal. Straight for me. I jolted awake with a strangled gasp, my chest heaving. My bed, the familiar red hangings, the dim morning light seeping through the window. It took me several moments to remember where I was. I sat up, my whole body trembling. It hadn't been a dream. I felt it. The cold, the whispers, the eyes. The portal was getting stronger. Downstairs, Ron and Hermione were already waiting when I arrived in the common room. The moment Hermione saw my face, her expression darkened. You saw something, didn't you? She asked quietly. I nodded. The portal. I swallowed hard. It's trying to reach me. Ron paled. That's not normal. No, it's not, Hermione agreed, already looking concerned. We need to hurry. The three of us wasted no time making our way to the library. It was still early, and most of the other students were either in the Great Hall for breakfast or still sleeping, so we managed to slip past unnoticed. Madame Pants, the strict librarian, was nowhere in sight, probably still having her morning tea, so we had the library to ourselves. Hermione led the way to the restricted section. "We're not allowed in there," Ron hissed as she reached for the chain barring entry. "Do you want answers or not?" she shot back. Ron groaned. "I hate when you use logic against me." With a flick of her wand, Hermione whispered, "Alhambra." The chain unlatched itself silently. We slipped inside. Rows upon rows of ancient books stretched before us, their leather-bound spines worn with age. Dust motes floated in the dim light, giving the place an eerie, almost reverent stillness. Some books were chained to their shelves, others whispering softly in languages I didn't understand. Hermione ran her fingers along the titles, muttering to herself. Then, here. She pulled out a massive, withered tome and dropped it onto the table with a heavy thud. The title read, "Rifts and Veils, the Boundaries Between Worlds." I exchanged a look with Ron. "That sounds exactly like what we're dealing with." Hermione flipped it open, scanning the brittle pages. "There's a chapter on portals." She skimmed further, her eyes narrowing. "Here, listen to this." She read aloud. "There exist ancient doorways, rifts between realms long thought to be sealed by the greatest of magical protections. However, such barriers are not permanent. If one seeks to open what should remain closed, they must first weaken the boundary through persistent force, rituals, spells, and the presence of dark magic itself." I felt my stomach drop. "So someone is forcing it open." Hermione nodded grimly and continued reading. "But not all portals are simply opened. Some are called, drawn by the presence of those attuned to their existence. Those who dream of the void will find it staring back at them." The words sent a chill through me. Those who dream of the void. The portal. The shadowy hand. The eyes. It was calling to me. Ron's expression was troubled. "If it's trying to reach you, what happens if it succeeds?" I had no answer. But deep down, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever lay beyond that portal, it wasn't going to stop until it got through. The words from the book lingered in my mind like an echo long after Hermione shut the ancient tome. Those who dream of the void will find it staring back at them. I had dreamed of the portal. I had seen those eyes. And somehow, I knew deep in my bones that it had seen me too. Ron swallowed hard. "All right, let's say, just for the sake of terrifying ourselves, that this thing is, in fact, calling to you. What does that mean? That it wants you?" The idea sent an uncomfortable chill down my spine. Hermione frowned, flipping back through the pages. "There has to be something in here about how to stop it. There's always a countermeasure." She read in silence for a moment, her fingers tracing over faded text. I glanced around the restricted section, feeling an uneasy prickling sensation along my skin. Maybe it was just my nerves, but the air felt heavier than before, like something unseen was pressing in on us. Finally, Hermione spoke again. "There are ways to seal portals, but what?" I asked. She bit her lip. "They require immense magical energy, more than any one wizard could produce alone." Ron groaned. "Brilliant. So, what?" We're supposed to summon Dumbledore's ghost and ask for help? Hermione ignored him and kept reading. Then, suddenly, her eyes widened. What is it? I leaned closer. There's a passage here. It talks about those connected to the portal. I stiffened. Ron shifted uncomfortably. Define connected. Hermione turned the book toward us so we could read. When a rift between realms is disturbed, it often seeks a tether in the mortal world. A link, a being sensitive to its existence, who unconsciously feeds its power. These individuals may experience visions, dreams, or worse, become marked by the void itself. My stomach turned. Ron read the passage aloud again, then pointed at me. You're marked, aren't you? I opened my mouth to protest, but I wasn't sure. The nightmares. The feeling that the portal was calling to me. The cold I had felt when the shadow had nearly grabbed me in the corridor. Hermione looked at me with a mix of concern and realization. You might be the reason the portal is growing stronger. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. You're saying I'm making this worse? Ron paled. Okay, this is getting a little too chosen one for my liking. Hermione shook her head. Not on purpose. But if the portal is using you as a tether, it means, she hesitated, then continued carefully. It means that if we find out how it marked you, we might be able to sever the connection. I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my thoughts from spiraling. And how do we do that? Hermione flipped further into the book, her eyes scanning rapidly. If it marked you, there should be some kind of sign. Ron peered at me. Do you feel any different? Other than the whole being haunted by an interdimensional nightmare thing? I shook my head. No, But then, a memory resurfaced. That moment in the corridor, when the shadowy figure had nearly touched me. I remembered the sensation that followed, the ice-cold chill that had seeped into my skin. And then, the dream. My chest tightened. Without thinking, I rolled up the sleeve of my robe, pushing it past my forearm. Hermione gasped. Ron shot up so fast his chair nearly toppled over. What the hell is that? I looked down, and my breath caught. A mark. Faint, almost invisible under normal light, but now that I was really looking at it, I could see it clearly. A thin, blackish symbol burned into my skin just above my wrist, shifting subtly, like ink swimming beneath the surface of my skin. It wasn't a word. It wasn't even human. Ron looked horrified. Mate, that's not normal. Hermione reached out hesitantly, not touching it but close enough that I could feel her worry. This is ancient magic. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I think the portal branded you. My heart pounded. It marked you as a conduit, she continued. A direct link between its world and ours. I wanted to be sick. Ron ran a hand through his hair, looking like he was on the verge of losing it. Brilliant. So what do we do? Do we cut it off? Burn it? Exorcise it? Hermione shook her head. We need more information. We need someone who knows about this kind of magic. Who? I asked. For a moment, no one answered. Then, Hermione's face paled, as if she had just realized the answer herself. Professor Snape. Ron groaned. Oh, bloody hell, Hermione. Anyone but him. I hesitated, but deep down, I knew she was right. Snape had always been an expert in the dark arts. If anyone knew what this mark meant, it was him. I sighed. All right. Let's find Snape. Underscore 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 underscore. The dungeons were colder than I remembered. The three of us made our way through the dim corridors, our footsteps echoing against the stone. Despite the early hour, Snape's office door was slightly ajar, a faint candlelight flickering inside. I swallowed hard and knocked. The door creaked open. Snape was sitting behind his desk, his black robes blending into the shadows. He didn't look surprised to see us. If anything, he looked annoyed. What, he drawled, could possibly possess you three to disturb me at this hour? Hermione stepped forward. Professor, we... She hesitated, glancing at me. Snape's gaze sharpened. Spit it out, Miss Granger. I took a breath and pulled up my sleeve. For the first time, Snape's expression changed. His eyes flickered from the mark to my face, and something cold settled over his features. He stood up slowly, moving around his desk until he was standing right in front of me. Then, before I could react, he grabbed my wrist, tilting my arm toward the candlelight. The moment his fingers touched the mark, a sharp sting shot up my arm, and I winced. Snape narrowed his eyes. Where did you get this? His voice was different. Tense. I met his gaze. The portal. For a long moment, Snape said nothing. His fingers lingered over the mark, and I swore I saw a flicker of recognition in his expression. Finally, he released my wrist. This mark, he said slowly, is no ordinary curse. Ron tensed. So, what, is it going to kill them? Snape didn't answer immediately. He turned away, staring at the flickering candle. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, This mark is a summoning. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Summoning what? Snape's expression was unreadable. But when he turned back to me, his eyes were sharper than I had ever seen them. The portal is no longer just opening, he said. It is coming for you. The room felt deathly silent. I swallowed hard. Then how do we stop it? Snape studied me for a long moment. Then, finally, he spoke. There is only one way to sever a link of this kind. His voice was low and deliberate. You must face what lies on the other side. The moment Snape uttered those words, the room seemed to grow colder. You must face what lies on the other side. Ron was the first to break the silence. Oh, absolutely not. That's got to be the worst plan I've ever heard. I couldn't argue with him. Every instinct in my body screamed that stepping into that portal, into whatever world existed beyond it, was a terrible idea. But Snape's expression remained unreadable, his gaze locked on me as if weighing something. Hermione, however, was frowning in thought. Professor, is there really no other way? Snape's dark eyes flickered toward her. No magic in this world can sever a link once it has been established. If the portal has chosen, he stopped, exhaling sharply. If it has marked them, then the only way to undo it is to go to the source. I swallowed hard. And what happens if I go in? Snape's silence was answer enough. Hermione paled. You don't even know, do you? The professor's mouth tightened. I know enough. Great, Ron muttered. That's comforting. I took a shaky breath, looking down at the mark on my wrist. It almost seemed to pulse under my skin, as if it knew what we were talking about. The idea of stepping through that portal terrified me, but what scared me more was the alternative, letting it continue to grow, letting it consume Hogwarts, letting it finally take me whether I wanted it to or not. I looked back at Snape. All right. If I go in, how do I get out? Snape studied me for a long moment, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that almost resembled hesitation. Finally, he turned away and moved toward one of the high shelves in his office. He ran a hand over the spines of several books before selecting a small, black-covered volume. He set it down on his desk and opened it, flipping through brittle pages. There is an incantation, he said at last, but it can only be performed once you are inside the other realm. It is an ancient countercurse, one that requires immense willpower. He slid the book toward us. Hermione immediately leaned in, her eyes scanning the script. Ex salvo nexus. Yes, Snape confirmed. If spoken with enough force, it should sever the connection between you and the portal. Ron frowned. What do you mean, should? Snape's gaze darkened. Because there are no guarantees, Weasley. My mouth felt dry. And if it doesn't work? Snape closed the book with a snap. Then you will be lost. A thick silence settled between us. Ron muttered something under his breath that I didn't quite catch, but I was sure it wasn't anything polite. I exhaled slowly. So, I go in, say the incantation, and hope I don't get trapped in some nightmare realm forever. Sounds simple. Snape's lip curled slightly, though there was no humor in it. Do not underestimate what lies on the other side. Hermione looked at me, her expression full of concern. We're coming with you. Ron nodded. Yeah. No way are you going in there alone. Snape shook his head sharply. Absolutely not. The link exists only with them. The portal will not let anyone else through. Ron threw his hands up. Oh, brilliant. Even better. Let's just send them alone into a void of unspeakable horrors. Enough, Snape snapped. This is not a matter of choice. The portal will only accept it's marked. I could see Hermione clenching her fists, clearly torn between wanting to argue and knowing that Snape was probably right. I gave them both a weak smile. I'll be all right. Ron scoffed. You better be. Because if you're not, I'm jumping into the void after you. Snape rolled his eyes. If the dramatics are quite finished, I suggest you move quickly. The portal grows stronger with each passing moment. That was how I found myself standing once again in front of the portal. The three of us had returned to the abandoned corridor. The air was thick with that same unnatural chill, and the shadows around the portal seemed alive, shifting and curling like tendrils of smoke. I took a deep breath, gripping my wand tightly. Hermione looked at me, her eyes wide with worry. As soon as you say the incantation, try to come back immediately. Ron nodded. And if anything tries to grab you, just, exit or something. I tried to laugh, but it came out weak and strained. Thanks for the solid advice. They both fell silent, watching me with expressions that made it very clear they hated this plan. I turned toward the portal. The swirling darkness seemed to stretch wider, as if waiting for me. I stepped forward. The moment I crossed the threshold, the world vanished. It was like falling through nothing. A weightless, endless abyss surrounded me, stretching in all directions. My body felt wrong, like I wasn't entirely real anymore, as if I were being unraveled thread by thread. Then, suddenly, I hit the ground. Hard. I gasped as pain jolted through my body. The air was freezing, sharp like needles against my skin. I pushed myself up and looked around. The landscape was impossible. A vast, ruined city stretched before me, its structures crumbling and twisted, built at unnatural angles that hurt to look at. The sky above was a swirling mass of deep purples and blacks, stars blinking in and out of existence like dying embers. And the whispers, they were everywhere. Soft, insidious murmurs slithered through the air, brushing against my mind like fingers tracing my thoughts. I shuddered. I didn't belong here. I needed to move. I forced myself to stand, gripping my wand. My heart pounded as I scanned my surroundings. Somewhere in this nightmare world, I had to find the right place to perform the incantation. But then, I felt it. A presence. Something was watching me. Slowly, I turned. In the distance, near the ruins of what looked like a cathedral, a tall, shadowed figure stood completely still. Its form was humanoid, but wrong. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. The moment I saw it, it moved. Not walked. Not ran. It just shifted closer. I gritted my teeth, raising my wand. My pulse thundered in my ears. The figure's voice was a whisper in the wind. You are ours. I took a step back. It took a step forward. The mark on my wrist burned like fire. This thing, this being, was what had been waiting for me. And it wasn't going to let me go without a fight. The mark on my wrist burned hotter with every second that passed. It was no longer just an eerie chill beneath my skin, it was a fire, pulsing and writhing as if something inside me was trying to claw its way out. And the figure standing before me, watching me with those empty, soulless eyes, knew. It had been waiting. You are ours. The words weren't spoken in any language I knew, yet I understood them perfectly. They echoed in my mind, weaving through my thoughts like tendrils of smoke, curling and tightening until I could barely breathe. I gripped my wand tighter, forcing myself to stand my ground. I don't belong here. The figure tilted its head. Its movement was slow, deliberate. You are marked. You belong. My pulse thundered. Not for long. I raised my wand and whispered, stupefied. A jet of red light shot forward, striking the figure directly in the chest. But instead of staggering back or collapsing, it simply absorbed the spell. The red glow flickered, then vanished into the creature's dark form like a drop of water sinking into the ocean. I barely had time to react before it moved. One moment it was standing several feet away. The next, it was right in front of me. I stumbled backward, my heartbeat slamming against my ribs. The thing loomed over me, its shape shifting like liquid shadow. Up close, its face, or what should have been its face, was even more disturbing. There were no features. No eyes, no mouth. Just a blank, shifting void that pulsed with an unnatural energy. And yet, I could feel it stare. You will not leave. I clenched my jaw. Watch me. I swung my wand in a wide arc Protego. A shimmering barrier erupted between us, the golden light crackling like static. For a brief moment, the figure hesitated, its body distorting as though it were struggling against an invisible force. Then, it stepped through the shield as if it wasn't even there. Cold fear shot through me. I had never seen anything walk through a shield charm before. It was like magic didn't exist for this thing. It reached for me. I barely dodged in time, stumbling as its long, clawed fingers sliced through the air where my shoulder had been. A chill brushed against my skin, and for a moment, I saw something, a vision, a flash of memory. Hogwarts in ruins. The sky above it swallowed by darkness. Shadows moving through the corridors, hunting, consuming. I gasped, shaking the image away. No, that's not real. The figure took another step forward, slow and inevitable. It is what will be. I gritted my teeth. Not if I stop it. I had no time for hesitation. I turned and ran. The ruined city stretched before me, its impossible architecture rising into the swirling void above. I had no idea where I was going, only that I needed to move, to put distance between myself and whatever that thing was. But I could hear it. The sound wasn't footsteps. It wasn't breathing. It was whispers. They slithered around me, brushing against my ears, my mind, dozens of voices speaking in languages I didn't know, yet somehow understood. You are ours. The mark is eternal. There is no escape. I forced myself to keep running. I wouldn't listen. I couldn't listen. I reached what looked like the ruins of a cathedral. Its massive stone archways were crumbling, its stained glass windows shattered. Inside, the darkness was deeper, thicker, like the portal back in Hogwarts, but alive. This had to be it. The heart of the portal. I skidded to a stop, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The moment I crossed into the cathedral's shadow, the mark on my wrist pulsed violently, sending a fresh wave of agony through my veins. I bit back a cry, dropping to one knee as my vision blurred. It is already part of you. The whisper was right behind me. I spun around, and the figure was there, standing at the entrance of the cathedral, its form framed by the swirling void. But it wasn't alone anymore. Dozens of other shadowed figures stood behind it, their shapes flickering and shifting like candlelight in the wind. Some were tall, others hunched. Some had too many limbs. Some had none at all. And all of them were watching me. A primal terror settled into my bones. This was their world. I didn't belong here. I forced myself to stand, my fingers tightening around my wand. I didn't have time to think. I had to act. I raised my trembling arm and pointed my wand at the pulsing darkness at the center of the cathedral. Ex salvo nexus. The words tore from my throat, louder than I ever cast a spell before. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a pulse. The ground beneath me shuddered. The air crackled. The shadows writhed. The figures let out a sound, not a scream, not a cry, but something deeper, like the very fabric of reality was protesting. The mark on my wrist flared, so much pain, so much heat, I screamed, falling to my knees as the energy around me intensified. The figures rushed forward. Desperate. Angry. No. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to raise my wand again. Ex salvo nexus. The cathedral exploded with golden light. The shadows shrieked. The figures recoiled. The portal shuddered violently, its foam rippling like a pond disturbed by a stone. The light spread, pushing the darkness back, unraveling it thread by thread. And then, the world broke apart. I was falling, spiraling through the void, the shadows peeling away from me. The mark on my wrist burned and twisted, the pain reaching its peak. And then, silence. I gasped, inhaling sharply as my body slammed against cold stone. My eyes flew open. I was back. The portal was still in front of me, but it was shrinking, the swirling shadows collapsing inward, folding in on themselves. The tendrils of darkness that had once stretched outward were now retreating, dissolving like ink in water. Ron and Hermione were beside me. Hermione was kneeling, shaking me. "Are you all right? Say something." I tried to speak, but my throat was raw, my body trembling from exhaustion. Ron looked at the portal, wide-eyed. "It's closing. It's actually closing." The shadows let out one final wail, a sound of defeat, of something being forced back. And then, with a final, violent pulse, the portal snapped shut. Gone. Just like that. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then, Ron let out a choked laugh, running a hand through his hair. That was the worst bloody thing I've ever seen. Hermione exhaled shakily, her hands still gripping my shoulders. "You did it," she whispered. I swallowed, looking down at my wrist. The mark was still there. But it was different now. No longer pulsing, no longer shifting. Just a scar. Just a reminder of what had almost been. I closed my eyes, exhaling deeply. It was over. Or at least, I thought it was. For a long time, none of us spoke. The air in the abandoned corridor was thick with the weight of what had just happened. The portal was gone. The swirling shadows had vanished. The eerie chill that had seeped into the stones of Hogwarts was fading. But the silence was unsettling. My hands were still trembling as I looked down at my wrist. The mark was different now. No longer burning, no longer shifting, but still there. A deep, thin scar, as if something had been cut away rather than fully healed. I ran a shaking finger over it. Hermione noticed. "It didn't disappear," she whispered. Ron leaned in, frowning. Is it supposed to look like that?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know." Snape had warned that there were no guarantees, and part of me had known, really known, that I wouldn't come back entirely the same. That world had touched me, and I had touched it. And now, something of it still lingered. "Does it hurt?" Hermione asked softly. I shook my head, but that wasn't the truth. It did hurt, just not in the way a normal wound would. It was deeper than that, as if the scar wasn't just on my skin, but in me. Snape would have answers. He had to. I forced myself to stand, even as my legs wobbled beneath me. "We should tell Snape." "Now?" Hermione nodded. "Yes." Before something. She stopped short, her breath hitching. I followed her gaze, my heart clenching as I saw what had caught her attention. The spot where the portal had been, it wasn't empty. There was something left behind. A single, jagged crack in the air. Like a scar in reality itself. Ron swore under his breath. "Oh, bloody hell." The crack wasn't moving. It wasn't growing. But it was there. And when I looked at it for too long, I swore I could still hear whispers. Hermione took a cautious step forward, her hand outstretched. It's like a fracture." "Don't touch it," Ron warned quickly. I didn't need to be told twice. Whatever was left of the portal, it wasn't gone, not completely. Maybe it never could be. Maybe all we had done was seal it, not destroy it. A chill ran down my spine. Snape needed to see this. We made our way back through the dim corridors of Hogwarts, the weight of what had happened pressing against us like an invisible force. None of us spoke much. Even Ron, who could usually be counted on to crack some sort of joke in tense situations, was silent. When we finally reached Snape's office, I didn't even hesitate. I raised a fist and knocked hard against the door. A pause. Then, the deep, measured voice of Professor Snape. "Enter." The door creaked open, and we stepped inside. Snape was seated at his desk, candlelight flickering across his sharp features. He looked up as we entered, his dark eyes narrowing as he took in our expressions. "Judging by your faces," he said smoothly, "I assume you were either victorious or terribly unlucky." Ron snorted. "Bit of both, actually." I stepped forward, rolling up my sleeve and showing him my wrist. The portal's closed. But the mark, it's still here. Snape's gaze dropped to the scar. His expression gave nothing away, but I saw the slight twitch in his fingers as he reached for my wrist. His grip was cold but steady as he examined it, his thumb running over the mark. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a quiet voice, he murmured, "It has left its mark on you." I exhaled shakily. "Can it be removed?" Snape released my wrist, sitting back in his chair. "No." Hermione's breath caught. "Are you sure?" He gave her a look. "Miss Granger, I do not say things unless I am certain of them." A heavy silence settled between us. I had known it, deep down, but hearing Snape confirm it made it real. The portal was closed, but I would always carry a piece of it with me. Ron shifted uncomfortably. "And, what does that mean, exactly?" Snape studied me, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "It means they will never fully let go. The words sent an ice-cold shiver through me. Hermione frowned, but the connection was severed. The spell worked. Snape nodded. Yes. The portal itself is closed, and the immediate threat to Hogwarts has passed. However, his eyes flicked back to my scar. Magic of this nature does not simply vanish. I felt sick. So, what? Am I still connected to them? Snape considered his words carefully. Not in the same way. The bond was severed. But you were marked by something ancient, something that existed long before Hogwarts. He leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering. And things that old rarely forget. The room was too quiet. Ron let out a strained laugh. Well, that's fantastic news. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to steady my breathing. So what do I do? Snape's gaze was unreadable. You live. I blinked. That's it? You closed the portal. You survived. And now you live. It wasn't the answer I had wanted. It wasn't comforting. But maybe, just maybe, it was the only answer there was. Hermione was still frowning. Professor, there was something else. Snape raised an eyebrow. Ron cleared his throat. The portal, it's shut, but there's still something there. Oh, a crack. Snape's expression darkened. A fracture, Hermione added quietly. Like a scar in the castle itself. For the first time, I saw something flicker in Snape's eyes that almost looked like concern. He stood abruptly, his robe sweeping behind him. Take me to it. Back in the corridor, we stood before the jagged fracture in the air. Snape approached it slowly, his hand hovering just an inch away from its surface. It should not be here, he muttered. Well, it is, Ron pointed out. Snape ignored him, his focus entirely on the crack. He whispered something under his breath, a spell I didn't recognize. A faint shimmer spread over the fracture, but nothing changed. His jaw tightened. It is dormant, he finally said. For now. The implication was clear. I swallowed hard. Will it reopen? Snape didn't answer immediately. Then, with a quiet sigh, he said, perhaps. Perhaps not in our lifetime. Perhaps not for centuries. But magic like this, it does not simply die. A cold weight settled on my chest. Ron exhaled loudly. Brilliant. So, we stopped the immediate disaster, but this thing's just going to be sitting here forever like a cursed ticking time bomb? More or less, Snape said dryly. I stared at the fracture. It wasn't just Hogwarts that had been scarred. It was me. And yet, I was still here. I had fought it. I had survived. I exhaled slowly. Then I'll be ready. Snape studied me for a long moment. Then, just barely, he nodded. The shadows of the past would always linger. But I had faced them. And I was still standing. The journey has come to an end, but the echoes of the story remain. The portal is closed, the shadows have faded, and the halls of Hogwarts are quiet once more. The weight of the unknown still lingers, a whisper in the dark, but for now, all is calm. The world turns, The stars shine above the castle towers, and the night holds you in its gentle embrace. Breathe deeply. Let the warmth of safety settle over you, like the soft glow of candlelight against old stone. The danger has passed, and you are here, whole and unbroken. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a still lake, floating effortlessly into dreams. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to fear, only rest, only peace. Sleep now, wrapped in the quiet magic of the night. And if the shadows ever call again, you will be ready.